Hello and welcome to Arts Insight Live. I'm Todd Ahrens. I'm the Vice President with Arts Consulting Group. Arts Insight Live is ACG's biweekly LinkedIn Live series featuring candid conversations on trends, data, open positions, and different ideas shaping the arts and culture field. If you're joining us live, we'd love to hear from you and hear from where you're from. If you want to put that in the chat, feel free to share some comments throughout the session as well. So today we're looking at how to explore and use wealth screening, or what we refer to at Arts Consulting Group as donor insight, because it also comes with detailed analysis. But really, we're looking at how wealth screening can empower arts and cultural organizations to move from passive data collection to strategic donor-centered fundraising, and to demonstrate how insights can strengthen relationships, improve decision-making, and unlock long-term philanthropic potential. We're here to explore, but often misunderstood tool in fundraising, and that is donor wealth screening. And more importantly, we want to see how it can be used intentionally to deepen relationships and strengthen long-term support for arts and cultural organizations. Today's conversation is not a technical walkthrough. Instead, we'll focus on the strategic value of wealth screening, how it shifts mindsets, influences decisions, and helps organizations move from reactive fundraising to intentional engagement. I'm pleased to welcome my colleague, Louisa Adrianson-Geyer, who is a vice president at Arts Consulting Group and who supports this work and in translating donor data into meaningful mission-aligned action. So Louisa, thank you for being with us today.
Very happy to be here. Thank you, Todd.
Wonderful. Louisa, I'd like to just begin with a broader context, looking at prospect research and how it's evolved significantly over time from a back office function really to a strategic driver of fundraising success. And from your perspective, why has this shift become so critical in today's arts and culture landscape?
Yeah, it's a very competitive market. Organizations who use donor research to inform the way they engage with donors and prospects are more successful because they can develop deeper relationships and fundraising strategies and campaigns.
Yeah, thank you. And how does Arts Consulting Group's donor insights or wealth screening in general support more confident and intentional fundraising decisions?
Sure. Donor insights are a vital part of an effective fundraising strategy. It provides information on a donor's capacity, philanthropic interest and activity, and how they're connected to your organization and its mission. With this information, development officers can gauge a donor's interest and ability to support your organization at any given time.
Wonderful. In what ways does it strengthen maybe the alignment between fundraising strategy and the organizational's vision for fundraising?
Sure. The information provided helps to determine how a donor's interests are aligned with your organization's mission, and that information can be used to speak about different initiatives that may be of particular interest to donors. So it can be applied to annual fundraising, including major gifts, planned giving, and perhaps foundation fundraising, also for capital campaigns and board development.
Great. And how should leadership teams and boards maybe rethink this role of donor intelligence in shaping the long-term sustainability of an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. Leadership teams and boards can look at donor intelligence as a practical tool for making smarter, more sustainable fundraising decisions. Solid donor research gives development officers the information that they need to show executive directors and committee chairs how the data supports long-term strategy. Also, it can help make a case for investing in a consultant by clearly outlining the potential return. With decisions that are grounded in real insights rather than guesswork, organizations are better positioned to strengthen donor relationships and build reliable funding for the future.
Great. Let's maybe take a look a little bit at wealth screening and why it matters so much in today's environment. And by that, let's look at it in practice without getting too technical. But how would you define donor insights in today's nonprofit context, particularly for arts organizations that may feel the process is a bit out of reach for them?
Yeah. So the aggregated information that's provided by donor insights comes from a range of publicly available information. The analysis provided The analysis provides 3 ratings that are summarized into a prospect score on a scale of 1 to 4, with 4 being the highest. And these are for propensity, so the prospect's likelihood or inclination to support your organization; affinity, the strength of the prospect's connection to your mission; and capacity, the prospect's ability to provide financial support. And the other score is an RFM score, and that is for recency, frequency, and monetary value. And this indicates the prospect's current relationship with the organization by measuring how recently, often, and at what level a donor has contributed. Now, then, these 2 scores are used to screen and segment your prospects and donors into 4 groups: distinguished philanthropists, who are major gift donors that donate to your cause and might have additional capacity; your champions, who support your cause and are not on the radar of other nonprofits; hidden gems, who have the capacity but are giving to other nonprofits; and not now prospects, who are individuals that do not appear to be philanthropists with any nonprofits, based on the data.
Yes, thank you. And I should clarify just a little bit here. Arts Consulting Group does partner with iWave, which is a part of Kindsight, the organization. And so some of these may be familiar to you if you use iWave. Of course, there are other well screenings out there, but we find iWave to be a great partner for us. But thinking about those categories, Louisa, what do you think it's essential to understand both, or why do you think it's essential to understand both financial capacity, but also the emotional connection that fundraisers make to donors?
Yeah, I think the information can really help development officers review the giving trends and how donors' interest in an organization can be valued based on the donor, the size and frequency of donors' gifts. This can open up conversations with donors about programs that might inspire them to increase their giving. So it really can help you make that connection between their investment and the things that they value and that inspire them.
What do you think some of the common misconceptions are that organizations have about well screening, maybe especially smaller to mid-sized organizations?
Yeah, I think in some cases, smaller or mid-sized organizations assume that donor insights is beyond their financial reach, or that they don't have enough donor information for this type of analysis. And really, the best thing to do is for them to reach out to an expert to discuss their needs.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about discovering the hidden donor potential that might exist. And many organizations focus heavily on acquiring new donors, yet often already significant donors, potential donors, already exist within their own current community and database. And why do you think organizations overlook that untapped potential in their existing database?
Yeah, I think sometimes nonprofits lack the human resources to delve more deeply into their data. And some organizations are just not fully aware of what type of information can be gleaned from donor insights.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit more about how that process, the donor insights process, reveals supporters who are deeply connected but underengaged with an organization.
Sure. So Donor Insights provides information about donors who are being overlooked due to their lack of engagement, for instance. This is the case with the Hidden Gems group that we mentioned above. So this provides deeper information that nonprofits might not currently have. And in addition, Donor Insights report is presented in a user-friendly format that can be shared with staff and with development committees so that they can really understand the process. And then we also share all the data in a separate document to development staff so that they can continue to analyze the information using different segmentations, for instance.
Yeah, and what happens when there's a single insight that shifts the donor relationship? What does that
Yeah,
look
yes. A single insight can definitely reframe how an organization understands and engages a donor. For example, a performing arts organization can screen its subscriber list and discover that someone who's been purchasing subscriptions for the past 5 consecutive years is also on the board of a family foundation. That information can help open the door to a deeper relationship. The subscriber could advocate for a multi-year grant that aligns with their foundation's priorities. This insight can contribute to an intentional conversation that gauges the prospect's interest and willingness to become a donor.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And maybe can you Could you share an example of how uncovering this hidden donor potential led to meaningful long-term engagement, or how it can link to that?
Yes, absolutely. An example comes to mind for me, which is when a donor screening discovered that a planned giving prospect owned several rental properties. This insight opened up a broader conversation where instead of focusing on traditional planned giving vehicles, we were able to talk to them about gifts of real estate. Those conversations ultimately led to the donor making a planned gift of one of their rental properties, and it was the first real estate gift received by the nonprofit. We then profiled the donor and their gift in our planned giving newsletter and on the website to help inspire others to consider similar types of gifts.
Thank you. So we've talked about getting the information, acquiring the information, and now turning this data maybe into strategy. And organizations, how once they have this information, the real challenge begins, because applying it strategically is what needs to happen next. And what does it mean to truly activate the wealth screening data rather than simply collecting it, in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this information should be used to inform every stage of moves management. It provides helpful insights into identification, qualification, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship of donors.
And how might organizations think about prioritizing prospects using this insight, and how can this intelligence really shape messaging, timing, solicitation strategies for them?
Yes, part of the recommendations are really focused on the four groups that we talked about earlier that come out through the screening and segmentation process, and we provide ways in which to prioritize their outreach. Excuse me. So the first one, distinguished philanthropists, are known to your organization and are current prospects for major gifts. So the recommendation is to revisit the cultivation and solicitation plan for each donor and determine which one has a strong potential for increased giving. Your champions are your annual fund donors who don't have a high giving potential, but who might stretch to give to special initiatives. It could be, for instance, at a museum, a special exhibition, or a special, a play that's being commissioned at a theater, things like that. The hidden gems, they're not engaged with your organization, but they could be prospects for major gifts because they have great potential for major gifts, for making large gifts. So excuse me, it's important to determine how to appropriately cultivate those people, and then determine which relationship manager is the best person to be assigned to them. And then the last group is the not now prospects. And those are folks who aren't connected to your organization's cause. And they could be included in end of year or special annual fund appeals. They really only merit sort of limited stewardship. They are part of your constituency, but as I mentioned, they're just not really connected to your cause. They're not giving at this time.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
And as you think about moving from, just having the information to intentional action, where do you see organizations maybe fall short?
Yeah. Yes. This is something that I've seen rather often, I would say. I've seen small and large organizations fall short with their cultivation and stewardship efforts. And these efforts, as we know, are essential for creating renewable sources of income and financial sustainability. However, sometimes cultivation and stewardship seems overwhelming to folks, to development officers. It doesn't have to be, as long as you implement processes that can be scheduled on a weekly or monthly basis, and that makes them manageable and consistent practices. In addition to donor engagement, these efforts also provide important anecdotal information that complement and enrich the information provided by donor insights. This combination gives you a better understanding of donors, their values and motivations. And in addition to their value for development officers, these insights give board members and development committees the context they need to fundraise in a more informed and meaningful way.
Yes. Thank you.
Mhm.
And beyond the tactics and wealth screening that seem to influence organizational culture. How does the process support a shift toward donor-centered fundraising or donor-centric fundraising and data-informed decision-making?
Yes, absolutely. Well screening can definitely shape more than just fundraising tactics. The insights that come from this process give development teams evidence-based information to guide their strategies for their own portfolios and for leadership and board members' portfolios. When staff and volunteer fundraisers have clear data and information to work from, they feel more confident and prepared to have thoughtful conversations with donors, and they really feel more effective.
Yeah, and when you look at the kind of three big factors that
Mhm.
come out of the well screening, the affinity, the capacity, and the
Yeah.
propensity, and how those all work together in terms of evaluating the donor potential. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Of course. So affinity, capacity, and propensity actually work together to evaluate a donor's overall potential. When we combine these factors, we help development teams prioritize prospects and tailor outreach for the greatest impact for your organization.
Great. Um, we're a little over halfway through today, and I just wanted to see if we might get to some questions here. But before we do that, how do you think Donor Insights, Louisa, how do you think it really strengthens relationships and not just revenue?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I really appreciate it as a former fundraiser for sure, because donor insights give us a multidimensional picture of a donor. It's not just about their giving history, financial capacity, or potential future gifts, but it's also about their values and their interests, really who they are as individuals. And when you understand these different facets, you can gain deeper awareness and appreciation for them. And you can talk about shared values, shared interests. It just creates a lot more opportunity to engage and to have conversations, and builds stronger relationships. And again, just really more meaningful relationships,
Great.
authentic relationships, I would say.
Thank you. Um, let's see if we've got a couple. I think we've got a couple questions. Um, what about this one? What is the risk of continuing to fundraise without a clear understanding of donor potential in your mind?
Well, I think what happens then is that you are mainly working off of anecdotal information to a certain degree. If you haven't delved really deeply into your data and analyzed it to better understand the behavior, engagement, financial capacity, trends of giving of a donor, um, you're just really going off of, I would say, limited information. And a lot of that, of course, also is complemented by the anecdotal information that we have when development officers or board members or executive directors meet with donors.
Great. Thank you. Here's another question. What systems or habits ensure screening insights are consistently used and not forgotten? What would your thoughts be around that?
Yeah. So I think that they need to be consistently used, as we mentioned above. Earlier, sorry. They need to be intentionally used. It needs to become a practice. And that information just needs also you have the ability of really looking at different aspects of a donor's giving of their interests. So you can always get new information. You can always look at what new initiatives you have or new strategies you're going to be launching, and just continue to utilize the data that you have to come up with uh, potential asks, if you will, for a donor.
Great. Thank you, Louisa.
Mhm.
Here's another one I might try and take a stab at answering, and
Sure.
it's, give you a break for a second. It's about the process of how this process can transform board engagement in fundraising in particular. Um, and my experience throughout using iWave or well screening in the past is that really is great at board engagement and board identification, the potential for new board members. Development committees are often there to support, but they need a structure, and we need to meet them where they are in terms of fundraising strategies. And this is another tool that can help them and help the development office sort out where to concentrate the board's efforts around fundraising, and what prospects, if they're not known, which prospects might be, which connections they might have. So another part of the process that we didn't talk about a lot here is that the iWave data that we use also identifies connections to foundations. If somebody is a member of a foundation, both public and private foundations, and that can also be another way to potentially engage board members if they're or anyone really on the development committee that you might have in order to move that forward. So I don't know, do you have any thoughts about board engagement?
I think it's really important to always keep boards aware, or development committees aware of I always like to share trajectories so that they can see, what was achieved the year prior. And that's something that could be a constant conversation. What was achieved the year prior, where you are now, and where you think you might end up compared to what your budget is, and then how that informs your next year's budget. I think just having them really understand the way in which development officers, how you launch strategies, how you look at the data. I mean, I think it's helpful for them to understand that even if they're not going to be doing that, it's helpful when they know how the work happens, if you will, because it's an added layer than just having the connection with somebody, right? It's a way of, again, using data, using evidence-based information to further your fundraising accomplishments.
Yeah. So we have another question here, and it says, can smaller provinces use wealth screen management tools? Our population is a little over 1.3 million people. And my first answer to that is absolutely. It really is a great tool for smaller organizations or smaller communities, because it helps smaller fundraising teams focus their efforts, I think. And, if 1.3 million people would be a lot of people in a database, but, I don't think you're going to have that effort, but it does help to shape where to focus time and energy, because that's certainly, we want everybody to support our organization, but we need to think strategically about fundraising and how to move that. You have thoughts about that, Louisa?
Yeah, what I would add to that, actually, what it brings to mind to me is that in a way, it's donor insights are very, very effective for smaller organizations who find that they have a smaller development team. They might not have an operations person, a development operations person, or they might have somebody who, does a variety of things that have to do with data, not just focused on development. So, and they might have, a development officer and a development associate or a grant writer. And with donor insights, it can really help them. It can be a ballast, if you will. It can provide foundation for them, the foundation they need to be more effective, because they have deeper knowledge that they would not have realistically had the time or resources to find out on their own.
That's great. Just scrolling to see if we have any more. I don't see any other questions in the chat right at the moment, but we really thank everybody for being a part of this today. And Louisa, maybe a final question for you. If arts organizations could adopt one strategic shift around donor engagement tomorrow, what should that be?
Well, this is what I say all the time, really, a focus on donor cultivation and stewardship. I think that those are just so vital, so essential. And prioritizing these efforts can have a big impact on donor engagement and in fundraising results, especially renewable sources of income and multi-year gifts that help, and also laying the groundwork for future opportunities like capital campaigns and planned giving programs, for instance.
We are getting a couple of additional questions here. I think we've got a couple minutes, so we'll try to answer them. One here is, what do you think about the gap that often exists between marketing and fundraising? Is there a break in the relationship with visitors or audience members if the not now prospects are only contacted during the annual fund campaign? Shouldn't marketing and fundraising work together? And that leads to real fundraising. My initial thought on that would be, yeah, absolutely. And I think we're seeing a shift back toward marketing and development offices being under one umbrella or really working closely together. Certainly fundraising has tailored targeted asks in different ways, but they should all be rooted in the mission of the organization, and marketing should also use those efforts as well. It should be a consistent message. It can be tailored towards specific audiences, but the overriding mission, in my mind, needs to be about mission.
Agreed. And I'll add my experience when I was a fundraising officer, director of development. To me, marketing and development always complement one another, right? Because one is earned income, one is contributed income, and together you are bringing resources to the organization. It's so important for the two departments to be talking to one another. And one thing that we always did in my departments, was that in the development plan, we also had a very well thought out and planned communications plan that we would draft. And then we'd speak with marketing and say, well, what are you doing at the same time? So that we wouldn't be, because, you don't want to send too many emails to people, et cetera, all those things that we know. So with the knowledge, marketing would have the knowledge of what we would like to do and the timing for our different campaigns. And then that really helped them put that into the overall brand, the overall marketing campaign, because as the marketing department is basically the agency for your nonprofit, right? They manage all your communications, and development is part of that, a very important part of it. But there's just a lot of information that has to go out into the world. Certainly, for exhibitions, performances, things like that. So how does it make sense? And how do you, again, as you said, absolutely, you always have to have the same messaging. But sometimes there's just a different focus based on the specific need.
So one last question that just popped in, and that is, how long does it take to see meaningful fundraising changes after going through the process of Donor Insights? I
kind of want to let you go.
I'm happy to do that. I mean, it really goes to what Louisa was talking about earlier, though, that you have to have a strategy going into how you're going to use the data, and how the development office or the entire organization is going to think through the different information sets that come back, whether that's just adding to major gift portfolios or prioritizing those portfolios, looking at planned gifts, potential foundation efforts. I mean, there's so many ways to use the data that it really needs a thoughtful development plan, and it needs, especially on the major gift side, it needs to have individual donor plans in those major gift portfolios.
Yes, absolutely. And to that, I would add the reminder that development takes time. The results of cultivation take time. And so, there's that saying that you have to be in contact. Different people the organization has to be in contact with a donor for a minimum of seven times. And I think that varies back and forth by organization, certainly. And whatever it is that they're doing with any specific campaign that they have going on. But I think that's really, really important to focus on is how the fact that it takes time, and that, for instance, a really good return rate for increased giving is, what is it, like a 3 to 4%? Is that right? I mean, I think 4% would be really high, right? To have an annual increase of that. So understanding that, I think helps you be able to forecast. And I've always felt that it is really important for an organization to dream big, but for your development department to be able to attain goals, because it's not for the faint of heart. Fundraising takes tenacity. I think that's my favorite word. And I always say that the patron saint of fundraisers is Sisyphus, because you work, you go up, and then, you keep on doing it, but you find joy in it somehow because you like what you do. And it's, it's very, it's competitive, but it's also really something that is very rewarding when you see the results, because it does take time and work and a lot of commitment.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for everyone who joined us. Thank you, Louisa, for sharing your insights. If you're listening or seeing this at a recorded session or something and want to learn more about donor insights or the well screening process, there'll be a link in the chat if it's not already there. And Arts Consulting Group will be back in the new year with new link, Arts Insights Live. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn. And thanks again. And we'll see